First of all, my name is Randy Jones. In case I haven't met everybody in the room, I hope to by the end of today. If you haven't met me, please introduce yourself. I am a native of Southport, so I can say I don't have a memory without the 4th of July. So this has been a part of my life as long as I can remember. So I'm very honored to have been asked to kind of give you a history of how the 4th of July has evolved over the years to where we are today. A little bit about myself. As I said, I'm a native. I spent many years as the Tourism and Community Relations Director for the City of Southport. But as the 4th of July, this will be my 19th year as a member of the committee. And from 2019 to 2024, I was either a co-chair or chair of the festival. So normally what was a 3-year term became 5. So Southport math, what can you say? So I hopefully will be able to share one of the things that I wanted to bring today was a little bit of the true history of the festival, but as I was asked to do was to do a little bit of personal journey for myself. I always like to kind of walk through how it was to be here through those years and do an evolution of the festival. So hopefully as we're going, if there is a question as I'm speaking about something, please raise your hand. I would like to kind of do it as we go instead of waiting to the end, because if you're anything like me, you got a great question and then you get sidetracked by something else. So I don't mind stopping when I'm talking to answer a question because it's fresh on your mind. But again, I am here today to kind of give you an overall history of how our festival has evolved. And I guess we would start in 1795, because that is the very first documented, I guess, festival or event in Southport. And what that was on our waterfront, directly across from the Fort Johnson Museum and Garrison Lawn, there were ships out in the river. And starting on the morning of July 4th at daybreak, they fired cannons actually fired cannon, like the really gunpowder, really wasn't cannons, but the cannons, they fired into town and did that throughout the day. And then what happened was, as lunchtime in the afternoon came, the sailors and captains came off and joined the citizens of Southport and had a huge big picnic on the lawn of the garrison. And they invited all the townspeople to this picnic. They had music, kids' games. So it really I would say would be kind of the start of where we are today. And unfortunately, there's not been a lot of history through the years of the festival. We know throughout different time periods, such as after the Civil War, there was always a celebration. Every town has always had a celebration for the 4th. That's something we're always very proud of. But it's one of those things that was just done, not really documented. You just kind of groups got together and said, today we're going to hold a picnic, or let's have some music, or let's, we all kind of just did it. There was not a real organization to the festival. So I know in those early years, they ended up just basically basically after it's like the Civil War, World War II, all these big events, it got highlighted because everybody was really patriotic. So you could tell through those time frames that things became a lot more active as trying to celebrate. And I do want to, talking about Bob here, I do want to comment that if you go on the Historical Society website, there is a great little piece he produced about the 1921 parade. It's through, they ended up with some photos from Private Arthur Red Ferguson, and he did a whole great 5-minute piece on that I would recommend you watch, because the best part of it is he was stationed over at Fort Caswell, so he has actual pictures of the 1921 parade in that piece. There's 6 of them, and then there's about 80 more of Fort Cassville during that time period. So I would definitely recommend taking some time and watching that, because I found it very interesting and great piece, Bob. And so it was through those time frames that, as again, we really were not an organized festival. We did see that in about 1950-ish, they don't even really give a date, we just keep hearing the 1950s, the town tried to organize what they called the Live Oak Festival, because, a town of live oaks. They said, oh, we'll just start with that. So what I've been able to research and look, there's about 2 years where they tried to put on this festival. It was music. A lot of it happened in Franklin Square Park and around what that was the school at the time. So it was all around Franklin Square Park. They did Queen's pageants. They did a bunch of different activities there. But unfortunately, it really didn't last. So we go through, again, not really unorganized, but not structured festivals or events through the 4th, because, again, very adamant that every year we did celebrate the 4th here. And I just know through talking to some of my friends and relatives that go back that long, they all talk about, well, we did a picnic, or, a whole group of us, but it was more family. And that's kind of where I think it stuck. But I do really want to talk today about how the festival that we know today, how it really started. And we're really able to say that, can put a date on that. That's 1962. Because, that was the year that a newly formed service group called the JCs, Southport JCs, were looking for their first fundraiser. So they put together a boat raffle, and they were the ones that started the boat raffle. And what they did was, for about 3 months prior to July 4th, they would sell the boat tickets, and their goal, they drew the boat July 4th night at Whittler's Bench, Cedar Bench. And at the time they were drawing the boat, they had music, they had a lot of the townspeople came out. It was to support and to learn, see who won the boat. So that was really the very first part of what's led to where we are today. And because basically these are the kind of times when I want to kind of go through how it's evolved, because with the JC starting the boat raffle in 1962, they had the boat raffle till we figure it was about 1987. That's when the JCs decided to no longer keep their charter, and they disband. But what they did was pass on the boat raffle to the Lions Club, who now keep the boat to this day. And that's been their biggest fundraiser also. So really, the 4th of July Festival, as we know today, started as a fundraiser. So I always like to kind of throw that out there. It really, you don't realize it until you think about it. It was basically raising money for a nonprofit is what's led to where we are today. And then the next year, in 1964, the newly formed Southport Junior Women's Club were able to organize what they called the Southport Arts Festival. And that was to partner with the JCs, because a lot of the Junior Women's Club members were also JSETs, which were the women of the JCs. And the reason I know this is because my mother was both. And so I found out through a lot of discussions with her years ago that really was a progression. It was like they thought that if the men were, if they didn't go ahead and start something like an arts festival, they'd be dealing with the men and the boat raffle. So they said, we'll start something else. And that's basically what they did. They ended up, but I also want to evolve how that arts festival has grown into what we know today as the arts and crafts and vendors that we have, because that's been a really unique evolution. Because when I look at my time as a participant of the 4th of July, I can look back in the early days. When I say the early days, the 70s for me when I was young, the arts and crafts grew into the vendors would be these little makeshift, kind of like if you think of in the Peanuts comic where they had that little building that he would do the cycle, it looked like those. We had these, but what was so funny was it was all the nonprofits. They were lined up all throughout the town, and like I was there with my church youth group. I spoke to my aunt today, who's 85, on the corner of Bay and Howe. That was where the Southport Little League had a big booth for 14 years, and they sold hot dogs. So all they sold were hot dogs. And she was telling me yesterday that she can remember in one afternoon, in about a 2-hour period, they sold about 750 hot dogs. But that was their big fundraiser. But my point with this that I find fascinating is this would be a situation where you had everybody in town with their little booths, and it was not really, it really was funny because you had my Methodist church youth group next to the Baptist church youth group, and we were all selling the same things. So it really wasn't a situation where we were really new. It kind of goes back, and I really want to highlight this because that's one of the things about the festival and the evolution. When I talk to people that have been around as long as I have and talk about the early days of the festival, it was geared more as a homecoming. It came out of that. It was, everyone that left or went on to live somewhere else, they would come back here at the 4th of July because they knew everybody would be central, either work in a booth. They always knew somebody would be involved in the 4th of July, so it was always, well, we're coming back for the 4th, we'll see you then. And it truly, throughout my whole childhood, up until I left for college, it was just like that. You knew everybody. It was a total homecoming. You would go down the street and you would see people you hadn't seen from the year before. So it really had that true down-home feel to it. And it's a challenge because as we kind of talked today, I don't want to make it sound, because there is a group of people that are constantly balancing what it was versus what it is, and they glamorize that whole homecoming idea, which was in itself felt very nice and very comfortable, but with anything, including Southport, we evolve. The question with this evolution is, how do we do it in a positive, fun way that everybody still benefits, but it keeps the feel and the nature of what the festival was. So I can say as a local that's been involved in the festival for multiple years, I walk that fine line. I always have. I always want to respect and understand how we got here, but also evolve into what we can be. And this festival is a prime example of that, how we've been able to take it to different levels through the years, but still keep that patriotic feel that we've always believed that Southport was built from. So, I've taken that on as a personal challenge through the years, especially as my term as president and co-chair, that, I respect. We couldn't be the festival we are if we didn't do that on the backs of the people that got us here. So I have a true respect for that. And the vendors and that growth has been probably one of the biggest examples, because we laugh. I went off to college and came back, and there were all these vendors. I'm like, what happened? Health department. That's what did it. We went from this quaint ability to have everybody just kind of doing everything to everything had to be health department regulated. So all of us were kind of, gone. So, just FYI, love the health department, but so that's kind of why the choice was. But it was also the idea that and this is probably a very good place to talk. Well, I'll save that for a minute. But the art, so that's the evolution of how you see where we are now with the arts and crafts. And, we've had some challenges with that because now we've had to relocate. And, with anything you make lemonade out of lemons. It's a great location. You've got a great view. We had been Franklin Square for multiple years. Now we're doing it on Bay Street, as you just have to evolve and make the best of it. And 1964 is when we would credit the start of the 4th of July parade that we know now. That was that first year that this group, and to understand at this point, it is really just individual nonprofits kind of just adding to that day and saying, well, we're going to do this. And so the JCs and a couple of them said, well, let's go ahead and do a parade. So we started to get volunteers throughout the town. And this is where the businesses came in. Our local bank, insurance, and different groups would come in and start to help finance these different events. And the parade was really the first one. In 1964, as I said, was really the start of it as we know now. And I was just explaining to somebody earlier that 1970 was really when I started with the 4th, because that was my first parade. I can still remember being 6 years old and being put on my first float, being literally picked up and put on the float, and my mother looking at me and just saying, do not embarrass me. You just stand up there and do not do anything stupid. And she said, I'll pick you up at the end. So, that's my real, as I say, I always have had a memory of the festival, but that's really, I can say, my first true involvement in it. There's nothing like riding in that parade and going down Moore and House Street, heading towards the hospital, and just seeing all the energy and all the excitement from the people. And that is one of our things that have grown over the years. And I can't talk about the parade without talking about one of our, I guess, major volunteers for this festival, and that would be Wayne Berry. He is an accountant in town, if you don't know him, but you would recognize him because he is on every board and helps out so much in this community. But he is now on his 51st year as a volunteer of the North Carolina 4th of July Festival. He is our godfather, as I call him, because he's been around the longest, has the most institutional knowledge, and he's one of the hardest workers. I mean, this is a man that through the beginning of our festival, as we're preparing, he's organizing taxes and everything else, and he's also helping us get the pageant, or the festival ready. So, I mean, 51 years, and I always joke about Wayne. He is one of those people, very quiet, but when he speaks, you listen. And I always have a story. In 2022, we were able, after the pandemic and after a little time off, we were able to continue with the festival coming back into Southport. So it was our first parade in 2 years. And of course, I'm the sole president that year, or chair, and the weather. It starts about 20 to 11, because the parade starts at 11, and all of a sudden it gets really dark. And luckily for us, WECT has been a great sponsor of the parade. So we have Gabe Ross, which is one of their weathermen, right there with us. So I'm like, Gabe, what's going on? And he says, well, and he's looking at his radars, and they're at the truck. And I'm like, can you tell me, is this safe or not? He says, well, I don't really know. He said, it kind of looks like it can skirt. And I think he said, let's wait. So 5 minutes go by, and I still can't get an answer. And it's like, I need to know what to do. There's thousands of people on these streets. It's not raining yet. But yes, it looks like it could hit us any minute. What can I do? He said, well, I can't call it. It's on you. And I'm like, I'm looking at the radar, and I'm like, well, I guess meteorology 101 wasn't my forte. So I have this thing in the back of my head, and I said, well, what can I do? And then I have that little person on my shoulder going, are you going down to Wayne Berry and telling him you're canceling this parade? So I turned around and said, we're going. So that was, and then I will just preface that with, weather was perfect, nobody was hurt, and I was able to do another year. But that was one of those things, literally, I didn't know what to do, and I said, I'm not telling Wayne. But if you do meet Wayne, please tell him thank you for his many years of service, because this festival would not be where it is without him and the volunteers. Because, he's been past president, so please, I couldn't be up here doing this if it wasn't for someone like Wayne. So I definitely want to acknowledge that. So, we go through multiple more years of the festival, and one of the things we started in 1967 was the Miss 4th of July Festival. And that really, I'll kind of pass this around. This is a program from the Festival Queen's pageant. And you go, oh, it's the South. Of course you're going to have a queen. We have a queen for everything. Well, we did. We ended up with the 4th of July queen. But what I learned, because it was someone that was lived in the area, and she became our ambassador. This was truly the person that went not only out to other festivals, but it was someone that would go to anything in town that was going on. They would represent the festival. I mean, they were everything from the Azalea Festival, everything around. They were our ambassador. And these were young ladies that I've known. I looked through the list night before last, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I know them. I knew them. In fact, I always joke, we have one, I would say, is a semi-celebrity, because Kim Weeks ended up marrying Charles Bronson. So she went from a Miss 4th of July to Mrs. Bronson. So yes, but the festival itself, or the Queen, was a very interesting addition, because it really took, and to watch the festival, the pageant being put together, my sister was in it one year, it really nurtured education for young women on presentation, and it really wasn't just who was the prettiest, it was truly who was going to be our ambassador. And we actually had this festival until our queen till 1991, and then at that time, for some reason, they stopped having our queen. But I do have it on a good source that hopefully next year we may be bringing that back. So I definitely want to pass this around if y'all want to look through it. It's a really interesting, time capsule. But again, this was one of those examples where we saw the opportunity to talk about not only the festival, but Southport. And this was one of our best ambassadors, and they went everywhere. And then I guess the highlight of all this would be 1972. And that was the year that the festival actually got incorporated. And we became the North Carolina 4th of July Festival. Secretary of State incorporated us. We did the board of directors, and we became a 501c6 nonprofit. We are in the process now of becoming a 501c3, which is more of ability to accept donations. But we have always been a 501c6, and so that really is when the year that we realized that this festival, was going to stick, and we had a board that kind of got all these other groups that were doing different events together. And this, again, was different people in our community, leaders, banks, lawyers, everybody sat at that table to help put this together. And with that, this is that time when we really started doing sponsorships and volunteers, because to put on a festival, and when I talk about probably 1972, if we had 6,000 people, 5,000 people here over the time period, because at that time, the festival was 3 days. It was the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So we really, it was a true 3-day festival. And so this volunteer group went out and raised funds and got more volunteers. And this is the time period that I have my biggest memories, because I can remember being over in Keziah Park, and we had archery. We had people doing that. We had, and this is a fun fact, it was probably about 1974, we had the world's biggest ice cream sundae. And it was, again, let's not talk about health department, because this literally was a huge tub of ice cream with whipped cream and things on it that we all ate out of at the same time. So, but again, drank out the hose, ate out the ice cream, I'm still here. But that's the truth. We literally had this, it was, at one point it was a big round bowl of it that probably had 1,000 gallons. It was huge. To one year, it was a trough that was in front of what is now the post office. It was a trough. Thank God I have no pictures of me eating out the trough. And the fun thing is, if you look at the schedule this year, our fire department is sponsoring the world's largest ice cream Sunday. I have a feeling it's probably individual little ice creams that you take out of there. I haven't asked. Maybe I don't want to know. Or maybe they're scooping it out. But I know in our fire department it is health department regulated. But that is an example of something through the years that we should have probably never been doing. But it's an example of how we just kind of did community things. And through the years, we would have. Where Taylor Field is, we had donkey baseball. And you're like, donkey baseball? Is that how, what? That is literally gentlemen hitting, they would play baseball, but to get to the bases, you had to get on a donkey and get to the base. And so I will just tell you that was a memory that I'll probably say on, and that's, again, those are our lawyers and doctors and bankers that were on those donkeys. And, and actually a former governor was on one of those donkeys. So that's kind of the fun things I can say I saw through the years. But again, it was all about the community. And so we really, truly all got together and just found fun things to do. Your different organizations just said, well, I'm going to add that this year, or I'm going to add that next year. And that led from 72 to 73. And 73 would be a very interesting year because that was the year that our fireworks exploded. Oh, yeah. And what had been happening through that time, the JCs, those gentlemen actually fired the fireworks off of a barge. They were directly across from the pier. They were trained. If you get a chance, on a video, I believe that's on YouTube for the chamber, in 2020, when we were not able to do the festival, I wanted to do a virtual version of it. So I found 4 survivors of that, that were very old men that were still alive, that were able to tell me the story of what it was like to be on that barge when it exploded. And so if you can watch, if you get a chance to watch that, it should be on the Chamber's YouTube, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to redo it and put it on the North Carolina 4th of July.com's website. But it's a cool story because they were out in the river, and as they said, they were trained. And one preface that one of the guys made very clear to me, no alcohol. He said, I just want to start this as there was no alcohol involved. We were told we could not drink, which I know my JCs, that was hard. So they went out there, they lit the first few. And by the way, I'm sitting on the waterfront next to the pier. And I'm probably 11 years old, and I'm, watching the fire, watching them go up, and the first one goes up, second one fine, then all of a sudden, you see something kind of go up and kind of and it goes up, fires, but then all of a sudden, as it fired up, I think what happened was it was they described it as being a real windy day, and they were out there and the wind shifted from north to northwest, or it shifted, and the canopy that was over the fireworks blew off, and some of the sparks came down and set the remaining fireworks off. So it had only been going on for probably 30 seconds. So you still had a whole nice amount. And so all of a sudden we're seeing what looks like and it was truly an explosion. It was like boom, boom, and you see all the guys jumping off the barge. And Wayne Berry did make a comment. He said, "Do you remember? You could hear a pin drop on the Garrison and on the waterfront." It was so, at first you thought, this is amazing, because I know for me, I'm like, that's amazing. If this is happening in 30 seconds, I don't imagine what the rest of this is going to look like. Not realizing, but then all of a sudden you realize it was crazy. So I always want to let you know, nobody was hurt. There were boats out there watching the fireworks that went straight over and got the guys out of the water. There was only one JC that could not swim, and he got over to Battery Island. He was able to dog paddle. He says, "I dog paddled the Battery." So it was probably one of the most spectacular 4th of July fireworks we've ever had. And our fireworks is probably one of our parade is one of our benchmark events. We always end the festival with our fireworks, and that's been something I've chaired for the last few years and been very proud to add and make it bigger, because this year we're doing two big things. It's a 27-minute firework display with a firework going off every 3 seconds. Wow. And then at the end of it, it's going to be a huge firework display at the very end, because we're doing it in honor of Charlie Perry. He's the gentleman whose barge we used for many years, and he passed away last year. So I wanted to do something special. So we're going to end the whole firework display with a big explosion in his honor. So that, the fireworks are always one of my favorite. But I have been the one on the, I think one year we had one of our Board of Aldermen have to go up, because we were storming, and have to go on the stage and let everyone know that we were not doing it. By the way, he didn't get elected the next year. No, just FYI. I'm sure it had nothing to do with that. But, I remember that was a hard one on him. But, our fireworks are always the best way to end the festival. I also want to talk a little bit, because I am watching the time, I want to be very respectful. We did something in our bicentennial 1776 that would probably be worthy of a discussion on its own, and I think we've got it. Southport produced, as part of the bicentennial and a big part of the festival, an open-air musical called Revolution. And Lou Hardy Jr., if you recognize that name, he's a local resident. His family, his house is on the corner of Atlantic and Leonard Street, still there. And he was a composer. He ended up living in New York, and he wrote Revolution about the governors of North Carolina during the Revolution. So we were able, if you visualize behind the city gym, they built a set of bleachers and a stage that backed up to the Four Sisters tree. And for the whole summer, every night, we would do this musical. And it brought in talent from New York. We had, the years before, Miss North Carolina as one of the lead actresses. It was it was a cool community event, because they had there were people that had to come in and help house the actors, because they were from everywhere. I will relay this real quick, because I was, again, I think at that point I must have been 12, and Lou Hardy was at our house, because I looked through this program that I'm going to pass around, and it's got the production staff, and it's got, the producer, finance, and all this. And then down there it says Revolutionary Director. It was my mom. And I'm like, what the heck is a Revolutionary Director? I'm like, so BS follows me. I'm just telling you, because I have no clue what a revolution, but I remember that was our whole summer. But I know personally, and my mother had to relay this story back to me, because I really don't remember it, but Lou Hardy was in our kitchen, and he called me over, and he said, would you like to be in Revolution? There's a small part in there for a young person. And he was trying to tell me all about how much fun it was going to be, and you're going to be, and I'm like, no. I'm going to camp, I've got this. And I said, you don't fit my schedule. My mother said, I looked at you. She said, you were polite, but you informed him that you had a busy schedule, and that was not going to fit into it. So if you wonder, can you imagine me at 11 and 12? So God bless my mother. That's all I've got to say. So that, again, I would love to, like Connie Leggett is a name that's been, she was the first person to organize the Queen, and she was the one that was the producer of Revolution. So and I think there's some videos of her on the Historical Society website that I think everybody would benefit from watching, because she's got a very colorful past that even includes Hazel. So I would recommend exploring.
One of those videos is about the Little Miss pageant and how that developed. It was, in addition to that. Yes. And there's another one. However, there's another one on there about her experience with her husband. Mm-hmm. Her first experience with Hurricane Hazel.
Oh, yeah.
Just quite.
Oh, yeah. The mattress scene, yeah. Honeymoon in the mattress. That's all I'll say. So definitely, but yeah, I would like to do more research and see us put together something on the history of Revolution. But if I'm correct, the Historical Society has the rights to that. Were you not left those rights from Lou when he died?
No.
No? Well, we should take care of that. But I think it's something that I know the town had talked a few times of maybe bringing back. So I would like to see if that can happen. 94 was an interesting time because, as I said, it was a volunteer group, and the leaders in the town, our businesses, were in charge of kind of organizing it, and their staff. Well, they got very busy, and they were finding it very difficult to put the festival on. So in 1992, in 1994, the Chamber of Commerce took over as our administrator, the Southport Oak Island Chamber of Commerce, and that job was to organize the meetings, do the paperwork. They kind of took it on as part of their community service, and they did that until I believe it was 2022 when the chamber had refocused their mission, and they were not doing events as much, so they were not able to continue the contract as our administrator, and that's when the city of Southport and our Board of Mayor and Board of Aldermen voted that the city would take on the administration of the festival in support. So we couldn't do it without the chamber and the city of Southport, because they're the ones that keep, they're the consistency, because our volunteers and leadership come and go, and it's the administrators that kind of keep us focused. So I do want to thank both of those, because we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing. Couple of things that I always want to talk about is our naturalization. 1996 was our very first naturalization ceremony, and I know personally, and I am on the committee for that, that's probably my favorite event for the festival, because with the immigration that we work with to bring in, Southport becomes a destination for these new citizens. They fight to be able to come here and take their oath. So there's nothing like watching this event and seeing the looks on these new citizens' faces as they're taking that oath. It's that reminder of just how lucky we are. If you have to put the festival in perspective, just come to the naturalization and see that appreciation that they have, and something that we never take for granted. Because I can laugh, in 2020 when we did virtual, one of the things we did was get a hold of the copy of the test that these future citizens had to take. I can guarantee you some of us would be in a little trouble, because it's not as easy as you think. They worked very hard to get there. And so I would just say to sit there and you can feel it. You can just understand the journey, and it's for us the appreciation of how lucky we are. And this year we're going to have we had always interesting to know if we're going to have it or not, because it's always up to immigration. This year was a little challenging because of budgeting, but they've agreed. So we have the Chancellor at UNCW as our guest speaker. He is a naturalized citizen from India. Our judge is a naturalized citizen from the Bahamas. So we like to be able to show it to our new citizens example of success, and you will see that this year in our naturalization, and that will be on the 3rd. We're doing it a little earlier this year at noon, so please come out. Before that will be the 440 Army Band playing, so it's well worth your morning on the 3rd. Also a big deal this year, it's the 40th anniversary of the Fireman's Freedom Competition. It started in 1985, so 40 years of our fireman's competition, and that is everything from the, I laugh when I look through the list, bucket brigade, barrel push, tanker tug, and a pie eating contest. So, but it's well worth it. You go out there, and what that is all the area fire departments and representatives, and they compete amongst themselves on these different events. And I use the term compete very loosely. They have a great time, and the public is all part of it. It's one of the events in the fort that I would recommend, that if you've never done it, try it, and you'll be hooked, because it's one of those things that you just sit back and laugh.
When does that happen?
That started in 1985.
No, privately.
Oh,
during the weekend.
It's going to be. That's the first Saturday. That will be the 28th, I believe. It's always the Saturday before the festival really starts, which is always an interesting. As I said, the festival used to be the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Well, it's grown. First thing we did was, I don't know if you're aware, in 1999, Oak Island ended up becoming a municipality by Long Beach and Yopon Beach merging into one. So, and that happened on July 1st, as I said, 1999. So every year on the 1st, they do a big anniversary event on Oak Island with children's games, music, all these different events. And so as we progressed with the festival, we added that event, as we've kind of highlight that as a partner with the festival. So the festival ended up being for many years the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Now it's the 27th through the 4th, because we've added more events, more things. So it's now, I looked at it as 8 days. So we've gone from 3 to 8, and it does take a team. So I always think, it's amazing how much we've been able to have that, partnership with Oak Island, because we call it, the Southport Oak Island event, and we include even other towns. We want to kind of be an inclusive festival. So we talk about Ballhead, we talk about Bowling Springs. So when you look at our book, you'll see all the different things that's going on around us. And I did kind of touch on a little bit about the COVID. 2020 was the year that COVID hit, and we were deep into the festival, contract signed, about ready to go, and we had to shut down. So that was the year that I jumped into as doing the virtual. And we did, as I say, we did a bunch of we tried to highlight the history and different events that would be taking place. So hopefully you'll have those on our website. And then in 2021, Southport was still under quarantine, but Oak Island was open, so we were able to do the festival on Oak Island in 2021. And that was which they lucked out, because they always do fireworks on the 1st, and then they got a second set of fireworks on the 4th. So that was a very fun event. And then luckily in 2022, we were able to return to our normal festival as we know it, and kind of are kind of going as we are to where we're putting on this year. So kind of want to bring us up to date, and this is where I kind of want to open the floor, because I know there was questions on economic development, and we've grown, as I said, in the 70s, maybe 5,000 people. In that festival now, we average 40 to 50,000 people that come through the town during the 4th. And that's that yin and yang, good and bad. Because as you live here, it's always great to say, oh, Southport, home of the 4th of July Festival. And I always talk to locals, and it's like, yeah, if you want to see a local, go to Walmart on the 1st of July because they're getting ready for Hurricane 4th. Or, you ask a local, what's their favorite part of the 4th? They'll say the 5th. So, it's that yin and yang with it. You are happy it's happening, but sometimes it's a little chaotic for you. So, again, those are lessons learned. We work, our police department does, and sheriff's department and highway patrol doing an amazing job of getting the traffic in and out. So we've got a lot of challenges we meet every year. But again, I think we've been able to take those numbers of people and work with our businesses and all the different opportunities you have to, not if you're even here for the festival and see it for a little bit, a lot of those people come back because it's a little chaotic and busy. They say, I've got to see this town when it's a little quieter. So we have a lot of people that come and end up becoming, multiple visitors. So at this point, I kind of want to open it up if y'all have questions.
Randy, I'm curious, with all the volunteers and the committee, and how many people how many people engage to put this on here?
Well, we are a 14-member board of directors, and then because each of our events have a committee chair. So at this point, if I looked through the list last night, we have about 39 volunteers that are actually assigned a job during the festival. And then it takes another group of volunteers, it's like for the naturalization, that we have a group of another 10 volunteers that help that day. And I have another, one of our committee members here, Kate Marshall. She's necessity stations, so those are important. So no job too unimportant to say. But yes, we are a nonprofit that relies on volunteers and sponsorship. So thank you for that. We couldn't do it without them. But just in our monthly meetings that we start in September, we do that with our full executive board, and then by January we're bringing in the full committee. We could have probably 40 people in the room. So it takes a village, and they always had the village idiot to lead, so we're okay. So good, thank you. Any other questions? And I'm around if you have any. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Yeah.
How much do the fireworks cost?
Well, I would say this year, because again, we're getting sponsorships, I believe by the time we pay for the fireworks and the barge, it's about $41,000. $41,000 is probably one of our biggest expenses. But even to talk about that, we actually have the American Fish and Frying Pan donate $10,000 every year towards that in honor of Ed Harper. So that's one of those things that we get earmarked a lot of money for because it is such a benchmark of the festival. But yeah, I think this year is $41,000.
Another question. I'm new to town, so this is all new to me. But I'm curious why it's gotten so big here. Why it's grown to such a big thing, because obviously there are all kinds of places that have fireworks displays, and you talk about the 60s. Wonder if it goes back earlier than that, to the 1700s or 1800s.
I think partly is our location, because when you look at our visitors that come during the festival, we are right in the middle of tourist season. So you've got residents that come over from Carolina Beach, from Oak Island, that are here for the week. So they make this part of their weekly vacation, and so, we end up with, what's a busy time anyway, they all just end up over here because we've got all these local beaches that end up using us as their 4th of July.
Yeah, I think it's because I'm pretty new also, but it's that you hear that it's the North Carolina 4th of July Festival.
Correct.
So people want to come and see that. I'm from Long Island, from a small town called Sayville on the water, and we would have wonderful local things like there was Summerfest, there was Miracle on Main Street at Christmas, and it used to be wonderful. Now everybody comes, so I know what it's like.
It is a challenge.
And how it changes things. It's not the same as it used to be, but it's something that just grows because word of mouth, people hear, this is fantastic,
Yeah.
come to this.
Yeah, and we get featured a lot in magazines. I mean, our naturalization was featured in our state magazine a couple of years ago. So we've got a big word of mouth, but also throughout the state, we're well respected. But I do want to, what you said, a little note I didn't mention, but the North Carolina 4th of July Festival is our title.
Right.
And it's very funny because everyone's like, how did they designate you that? I said, we put it in the paperwork when we sent it to the, we named ourselves the North Carolina 4th of July Festival. And, Miss Marshall, our Secretary of State, at that point, she's been in our parade now for at least, our Secretary of State, Eileen Marshall, has been in our parade probably for 20 plus years. Wow. But yeah, we kind of named ourselves that. And so, first come, first serve. Yes, ma'am.
Randy, the festival has evolved over the years, as you pointed out. Do you get feedback about a perennial favorite piece of that people just simply can't live without for the festival?
We do, and I think it's funny because, as with any nonprofit group, and I'd like to say a well-run group, finances are always an important part. So one of the things we did was make sure we have a contingency fund for what we consider the main events that everyone talks about. Mm-hmm. So if by chance there was an issue and we had to choose, it would be parade, naturalization, and fireworks. Because everyone else, a lot of this is self-financed, like the fire department, they do that themselves. So, but I'm talking about what we, the festival, pay for. Those are the things that we finance, and those are things that we say are important because that's kind of our group. But so we have a contingency fund that would take care of that.
Thank you.
I have just one last comment, and it will be done. Reading through, I guess, Joshua's book, Joshua's Hope book, they talked about firing cannons as being some of the original stuff that happened, and they did it consistently. It would be amazing to have something like that happen, to reenact it, but I don't know if that's ever happened in the history.
Well, we have actually done some. We've done some cannon fire in the past. In fact, when you leave today, go and check right next to us, Thor, which is a cannon that the Historical Society has. That has fired at points during the festival. It's like what kicked off the Freedom Run and the parade and different things. So we've tried to go back to that when we could.
Yeah, that's cool.
I have another question. Because it's been going on for a long time, and the research that I'm doing, I see that blacks and whites, that there's a slight different history of what's happening here. Were they always included? How did that work in the past?
I would say, well, there's always an invitation. Everyone's welcome to sit at the table for the 4th. I know that a lot of things, from my understanding within the African American community, it was church oriented. So they focused on that a lot during the 4th. But I know that we've had some things every year that, we've always had, a joint effort to try to get everybody around the table. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.